Hi everyone. Welcome to Lunar Sleep Studio. The night fell slowly over the small mountain town, and the soft sound of rain began to tap gently against the windows of an old wooden cottage where a man named Elias sat alone beside a dim lantern, tracing invisible patterns across the surface of his telescope as if trying to remember something he once knew but had somehow forgotten. The room smelled of wet earth and old books, and every few seconds, the flame of the lantern trembled as if reacting to the weight inside his chest. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and the distant hum of thunder rolling lazily through the clouds. But Elias barely noticed. He kept staring at the sky as if the stars were supposed to speak to him, but had chosen silence instead. His voice cracked softly when he murmured, almost to himself, "It's been years since I saw the constellations clearly, years since the sky felt like home," and his fingers tightened around the telescope, a gift from his late mentor who always said, "The universe is not out there, it's inside you." Every time the rain struck harder, he felt a memory pull at him, his mentor's laughter, the first night he discovered Saturn's rings, the promise he once made to himself never to let the wonder fade. Suddenly a knock echoed at the door, a hesitant tap tap tap, and Elias blinked, as if waking from a long sleep. When he opened the door, he found a young woman standing under the dripping branches of the oak tree, her clothes soaked, her breath shaky from climbing the hill. She whispered, "Sir, are you the astronomer everyone talks about?" And the way her voice wavered reminded him of a night long ago when he had shown up at his mentor's door lost, unsure, and desperate for direction. Elias stepped aside gently, nodding for her to come in, and as she crossed the threshold, the lantern light caught the silver locket around her neck. She held it tightly as though it carried a secret. She said her name was Mira, and she explained that she had walked all this way just to ask him one question. A question she couldn't shake no matter how hard she tried. Elias offered her a warm towel and sat across from her at the small wooden table as the rain grew heavier, filling the silence like a second presence in the room. When he finally asked what she wanted to know, Mira looked up with eyes full of something he couldn't identify, fear, longing, or maybe hope trembling on the edge of breaking. She whispered, "How do you find your way back to something you lost, when you're not even sure if it's still waiting for you?" Elias felt something shift inside his chest, a familiar ache he thought he had buried. For a moment he didn't answer. He simply studied her, noticing how her hands tightened into fists on her lap, how her breath hitched like she was fighting tears. He remembered how he once asked his mentor a question, almost identical. Instead of offering advice, his mentor had walked him outside into the stormy night and pointed to the sky and said, "Even when the clouds hide the stars, they're still there. You just have to trust they haven't stopped shining." Elias inhaled deeply, stood, and walked slowly to the window. The rain blurred the world beyond, turning the distant mountains into soft shadows and the forest into a sea of trembling leaves. He spoke without turning around, his voice softer than the storm yet heavier than the silence. "Sometimes the things we lose aren't really gone, they're just waiting behind a cloud, the same way stars wait for the sky to clear. The real question is whether you're willing to stand in the rain long enough for the clouds to pass." Mira swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she admitted, "I'm scared. I don't know if I have the strength." Elias finally turned to face her and stepped closer, placing the old telescope gently into her hands. She looked at him in confusion, but he nodded. "Look through it," he said quietly. "Not to see the sky, but to see yourself finding it again." Mira hesitated, then lifted the telescope toward the window. The lens caught only streaks of rain and the soft glow of distant lanterns from the valley below. But something in her expression changed as she breathed out slowly. "It's blurry," she whispered. Elias answered, "Everything is blurry when your heart is tired. But clarity comes back if you keep looking." Mira lowered the telescope and stared at him, eyes shimmering. "Is that what happened to you?" she asked, and the question cut deeper than she knew. Elias exhaled, long and trembling. He admitted that he had stopped looking at the stars after losing his mentor and after life pulled him into routines that drained the wonder out of him. "I thought I lost the sky," he said softly. "But the truth is, I lost myself." The room grew still, except for the rain's gentle rhythm. Mira looked down at her locket and slowly opened it, revealing a tiny photograph of her father, smiling under a starry sky, holding her in his arms. "He used to show me the constellations," she whispered, tears finally rolling down her cheeks. "But after he passed, I couldn't look at the sky anymore. It hurt too much, like the stars were accusing me of forgetting him." Elias felt his throat tighten as he gently pushed a cup of warm tea toward her. "The stars don't accuse," he said quietly. "They remind. Not of what you lost, but of what you're still connected to." Mira covered her mouth as a soft cry escaped her, and Elias placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. For the first time in years, he walked to the door and opened it wide, letting the cool night air and scent of rain spill inside. "Come with me," he said. "Just for a moment." Mira followed him out onto the porch, where the storm had softened and the clouds were beginning to drift apart. In the break between them, a single star appeared, faint but steady, like a small promise carving a hole through the darkness. Mira gasped softly, and Elias felt something warm spark in his chest, a quiet reminder that even forgotten parts of ourselves can awaken again. As they stood together in the gentle rain, watching the stars slowly brighten, Elias whispered, "The sky always returns, and so do we." The moment lingered, soft and fragile, as if the whole night paused to listen. Mira turned to him and said in a trembling voice, "Will you help me learn again?" And Elias found himself nodding, not just for her, but for the version of himself that was still waiting somewhere among the constellations he had abandoned. The rain eased into a soft drizzle as he answered, "Yes. But we'll do it together. One night at a time." Mira smiled through her tears, and something inside Elias, something long dormant, stirred awake under the first star of the night. The rain had quieted into a soft whisper by the time Mira settled into the old armchair near the window, clutching the warm cup between her palms as if it were the only thing grounding her in that moment, while Elias moved slowly around the room, lighting another lantern and straightening the scattered papers on his desk, not to impress her, but because something about her presence made the old cottage feel alive again. The night outside was still heavy with drifting clouds, but every now and then a faint star peeked through, shimmering like a secret trying to reveal itself. Mira watched Elias with quiet curiosity, noticing the gentle way he handled everything, as if each object in the room held a memory he didn't want to disturb. She finally asked, her voice soft, "Were you always alone up here?" Elias paused, fingers resting on a dusty book, and he gave a small smile, the kind that hides more truth than it shows. No, he answered, sitting across from her. But I learned how to be alone when life stopped giving me choices. Mira lowered her gaze, turning the cup slowly in her hands as she said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing, like I keep losing pieces of myself, wherever I go." Elias leaned back slightly, watching her with an attentiveness she wasn't used to. "People don't disappear," he said gently. "They just forget where they last saw themselves." She let out a shaky breath and admitted that the city she left behind felt too loud, too unforgiving. She spoke of days when she moved through crowds feeling invisible, of nights when she lay awake waiting for sleep that never came, of the constant pressure to pretend she was fine. The locket around her neck shook slightly as she tried to calm her trembling fingers. "I thought maybe the sky would help me remember something good," she whispered, "but I couldn't find it. I couldn't find anything." Elias nodded slowly as if her words echoed something he once knew deeply. He rose and walked to a wooden chest near the corner of the room, opening it carefully. Inside were maps, hand-drawn star charts, notes scribbled in fading ink, sketches made by a younger version of himself. He pulled out a folded sheet and brought it to her. When she opened it, Mira saw a constellation drawn in delicate strokes, with a line of writing beneath it in an unfamiliar, uneven script. "My mentor wrote that for me when I first came to him," Elias said quietly. "I was angry at the world, lost in ways I didn't understand. He told me that the stars don't give answers, they give directions. And the rest is up to us." Mira traced the constellation with her fingertip, realizing it wasn't just a map, it was a memory preserved on paper. "Did it help you?" she asked. Elias hesitated before replying, "It helped me find a path. I just stopped walking it for a while." Lightning flickered silently across the horizon, illuminating the valley for a brief moment. Mira stood and walked toward the open door, breathing in the cool night air. "It's strange," she murmured. "I don't feel as scared as I did earlier." Elias stepped beside her, leaning on the railing of the porch. "Fear doesn't vanish," he said. "It just loses its power when you feel seen." Mira swallowed, realizing how long it had been since anyone looked at her the way Elias did, without judgment, without expectation. She turned to him suddenly and asked, "Why did you stop? Why did you leave the stars behind?" Elias's jaw tightened subtly, and his eyes drifted toward the telescope resting on the table inside. "Because I thought I failed," he admitted. "I thought the universe had stopped speaking to me, that I wasn't worthy of hearing it anymore." Mira shook her head gently. "I don't think the universe ever stopped speaking," she said. "Maybe we just stopped listening when our hearts hurt too much." Her words settled deep in him, stirring something he hadn't let himself feel in years. He cleared his throat softly and pointed toward the sky. The clouds were slowly drifting apart, and a faint cluster of stars emerged, fragile, distant, but undeniably present. "Come," he said, guiding her toward the edge of the porch. "Look up. Tell me what you see." Mira tilted her head back, letting the drizzle touch her face, her eyes widening as more stars slowly pushed through the thinning clouds. "It looks like," she began, but she stopped, unable to find the right word. Elias finished for her, "Like hope you forgot you deserved." She closed her eyes briefly as tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks, and when she opened them again, the sky seemed brighter, as if responding to her. Elias watched her quietly, feeling something inside him shift, something like responsibility, or maybe the quiet rebirth of a purpose he thought he had lost. "You came here for answers," he said softly. "But maybe what you really needed was a place to breathe." Mira nodded, wiping her face with the sleeve of her jacket. "And maybe," she whispered, "what you needed was a reason to open the door again." For a long moment they stood side by side, listening to the gentle rhythm of the rain, neither of them speaking. There was no need to. The silence between them felt safe, like a small bridge forming across two lonely worlds. Finally Elias turned and stepped inside. "Tomorrow," he said, "I want to show you something. Something I haven't shared with anyone since my mentor passed." Mira followed him with her eyes, curious and slightly anxious. "What is it?" she asked. Elias glanced over his shoulder, his expression both mysterious and warm. "A piece of the sky you've never seen before." Myra's heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and fear, but she nodded quietly. She didn't know what awaited her in the next night, or what truths might surface beneath the stars Elias promised to reveal. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a small flicker of something she couldn't deny. She felt alive. The morning arrived gently, with a pale golden light spilling across the wooden floorboards of the cottage as Mira slowly opened her eyes, realizing she had fallen asleep curled up in the old armchair near the window, the locket still clutched in her hand. The air smelled faintly of rain and pine, and the quiet was so peaceful it felt almost unreal compared to the restless nights she had lived through in the city. She sat up slowly, noticing Elias standing outside near the edge of the clearing, his coat brushing against the tall grass as he stared toward the mountains with a stillness that suggested he had been awake for hours. Mira stepped outside, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders, the gravel crunching softly under her feet. Elias didn't turn immediately. He kept his eyes on the sky, where thin strands of clouds drifted lazily across the soft blue canvas. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a fragile kind of calm. "There's something different about the mornings up here," he said. "They always feel like a chance to start over." Mira walked to stand beside him, watching as a bird darted across the clearing, leaving ripples of motion in the quiet. "Do you come out here every morning?" she asked softly. Elias gave a faint smile. "I used to," he admitted. "Before everything shifted." She waited, sensing the heaviness behind his words, but he didn't elaborate. Instead, he pointed toward the top of the hill where a narrow path disappeared into a cluster of tall trees. "There's something I want to show you today," he said. "It's not far, but it's important." Mira nodded, feeling a small knot of curiosity tighten in her stomach. Elias looked at her briefly, searching her face for hesitation, but she met his gaze with quiet determination. "I trust you," she said simply, and something in him softened. They walked slowly along the trail, the ground still damp from the rain, the scent of moss and earth rising with each step. Birds chirped softly from high branches, and every now and then the wind carried the distant rush of a stream hidden beyond the trees. Mira found herself watching Elias, noticing how he moved with both purpose and caution, as if he knew the forest intimately yet carried a weight that held him back. finally asked, "Is this where you used to come with your mentor?" Elias's steps faltered slightly before he nodded. "Yes. This path holds more memories than I care to admit," he said. "Some beautiful, some difficult." As they continued, the forest opened into a small clearing, and at its center stood an old observatory dome, weathered by years of storms and sun. Moss grew across its rusty metal sides, and vines wrapped around the base as if trying to pull it back into the earth. Myra's breath caught in her throat. "This was yours?" she asked. Elias stepped closer, touching the metal gently, his fingers tracing scratches and marks that held decades of stories. "It was ours," he said quietly. "My mentor and I built this place together. It was where I first learned to see the universe not as something distant, but as something alive." Mira followed him as he pushed open the heavy door. Inside, dust particles floated through the beams of sunlight that spilled through cracks in the dome. Old star charts were pinned to the walls, their edges curled. A massive telescope dominated the center of the room, covered with a cloth that looked older than Mira herself. Elias approached it reverently, pulling the cloth away with slow hands. Underneath was a beautifully crafted, polished instrument aged, but still magnificent. Mira couldn't speak for a long moment. She reached out and touched the cold metal softly. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias looked at her carefully. "This is what I wanted to show you. This is the heart of everything I used to be." Mira turned to him, her brows pulling together. "Why did you stop coming here?" Elias exhaled slowly, reaching for a small wooden box on a nearby shelf. He opened it, revealing an old notebook with pages yellowed by time. "Because the last time I stood here was the night my mentor took his final breath," he said. Myra's eyes widened, and she stepped closer as he opened the notebook. Inside were sketches of constellations, notes written in hurried handwriting, and on the final page, a message that looked shakier than the rest: "Don't stop looking up." Elias's voice trembled as he continued. "He wrote that for me hours before he passed. But instead of inspiring me, it crushed me. I couldn't bring myself to return. I thought I had no right to continue without him." Mira felt tears prick her eyes as she reached out and rested a gentle hand over his. "He didn't tell you to replace him," she whispered. "He told you to continue what he taught you." Elias closed his eyes for a moment, holding her words inside him as if they were a light he didn't know he needed. Mira walked slowly around the room, touching the old notes, the faded star maps, the fragments of a life filled with passion and purpose. She paused at a shelf lined with small glass jars, each containing soil, leaves, or tiny stones labeled with dates and locations. "What are these?" she asked, picking up one. Elias chuckled softly, the first true warmth she had heard from him that morning. "My mentor believed the universe left clues everywhere," he said. "He collected things from each place we observed the sky. He said the Earth was part of the cosmos, too." Mira smiled, imagining a younger Elias running behind an older man who insisted every pebble held meaning. When she turned back to him, she saw something shift in his eyes, like a window slowly cracking open after years of being stuck. "Why show this to me?" she asked quietly. Elias hesitated before answering. "Because when you knocked on my door last night, something in me woke up. Something I thought was gone. And I realized, maybe it's time I stopped hiding from the past. Mira stepped closer, her voice gentle. You don't have to face it alone. A warm breeze drifted through the open door, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of clearing skies. Elias moved toward the telescope, adjusting the angle slightly, his fingers finding old familiar motions. Tonight, he said with certainty he hadn't felt in years, we'll look at the stars from here. Not as someone lost, but as people trying to find their way back. Mira nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle deep inside her. As they stepped out of the observatory, sunlight breaking fully across the clearing, Elias paused and looked toward the sky with new eyes. Mira followed his gaze, and for the first time since arriving, she felt something settle inside her, a small, steady truth forming quietly. Some people appear in your life not by accident, but because both of you are meant to heal something in each other. Neither of them said it out loud, but both felt it in the stillness of that moment. Tonight would change everything. The sun slipped lower behind the mountains as evening painted the sky in soft hues of violet and amber, and Mira felt her heart stir with a strange mix of anticipation and nerves while she and Elias walked back toward the cottage, both carrying the weight of what the night inside the observatory might reveal. The forest around them rustled with quiet life, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the soft crunch of their footsteps on the damp ground. Mira kept glancing at Elias, noticing how his expression shifted between focus and worry, as though old fears were rising with each step. She finally asked, "Are you sure you're ready to go back tonight?" Elias didn't answer immediately. He took a deep breath, letting his eyes linger on the fading light before saying, "Readiness isn't something that magically appears. Sometimes you just decide you won't run anymore." Mira nodded, understanding more than she expected to. Inside the cottage, Elias moved around quietly, picking up small tools, cleaning the spare lenses, and wiping dust from the old notebooks he planned to bring. Mira watched him with gentle curiosity, noticing how his hands occasionally paused mid-motion, fingers trembling ever so slightly as memories pulled at him. She stepped forward and reached out, lightly touching his wrist. "You don't have to be perfect tonight," she whispered. "You just have to show up." Elias looked at her, the tension in his shoulders easing as he gave a half-smile. "You speak like someone who's lived through storms," he said. Myra's eyes softened. "I'm still in mine," she admitted. "But maybe that's why I'm here." The sky darkened into a deep blue as they made their way back toward the observatory. Lanterns hung from branches lit their path, flickering with each movement of the breeze and casting soft, trembling shadows across the trail. When they reached the clearing, Mira noticed how different the observatory looked at night, no longer worn and abandoned, but quietly waiting, like a heart that had gone still yet never stopped hoping for a beat. Elias hesitated at the entrance, his breath catching. Mira stepped beside him, close enough that her shoulder brushed his arm. "Let's go in together," she said. With a slow nod, Elias pushed the heavy door open. Inside, the scent of dust, old paper, and metal greeted them. But this time Mira sensed something else, something like a memory waking up. Elias walked directly to the telescope, checking the gears, adjusting the angle. His movements were careful but practiced, as if his body remembered the motions even when his heart struggled to. Mira lit 2 lanterns and placed them near the window, allowing enough light to see without drowning out the stars. "Tell me about your mentor," she said softly, leaning on the old wooden table that held the star charts. Elias paused, his hand resting on the telescope. He was the kind of man who believed the universe loved questions more than answers, he said. He used to say that searching for light teaches you more than finding it. Mira smiled faintly. "He sounds like someone who changed you." Elias nodded. "He did. He taught me how to see wonder in everything, even in things that looked broken." Mira felt a familiar ache in her chest, the kind that whispered of her father. She walked to one of the pinned charts and traced the faded lines of a constellation. "My father used to tell me that stars were stories, not lights," she said. "That each one carries a memory, and when we look at them, we're reading something old but alive." Elias turned to her slowly. "He wasn't wrong," he murmured. The clouds shifted outside, revealing a wide stretch of stars that shimmered against the dark sky like scattered diamonds. Elias's breath softened, the tension in his voice disappearing as he whispered, almost reverently, "They're clearer tonight than they've been in years." Mira stepped beside him, her eyes widening in wonder. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice trembling. Elias looked through the telescope first, adjusting it with precise motions, then stepped back. "Go on," he encouraged. "Look." Mira hesitated, wrapping her fingers around the cool metal before leaning forward to gaze through the lens. The moment her eyes focused, her breath hitched sharply. She saw a cluster of stars glowing softly, forming a delicate shape that looked almost like an outstretched hand. "Oh," she whispered, unable to speak more as emotion surged unexpectedly in her chest. Elias watched her, seeing her shoulders shake as she blinked through tears. "What do you see?" he asked gently. Mira didn't look away from the telescope. "Something familiar," she whispered. "Like someone is reaching for me." Elias felt his heart clench, the memory of his mentor's last words echoing within him. Mira finally stepped back, wiping her cheeks with trembling hands. "It's strange," she said. "I thought it would hurt to see the stars again, but it feels more like they're welcoming me back." Elias nodded, his voice low. "Sometimes the things we fear returning to are the very things waiting to heal us." Mira joined him near the window, both of them staring at the open sky. The lanterns flickered, illuminating their faces just enough to reveal the vulnerability they both carried. A sudden gust of wind pushed the observatory door slightly, and it creaked like an old voice joining their conversation. Mira shivered lightly. Elias draped his coat over her shoulders without a word, his gesture gentle but protective. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and something deeper, something forming quietly, almost cautiously, between two lost souls learning how to breathe again. "Thank you," she whispered. Elias lowered his gaze, his voice soft. "For what?" "For letting me see a part of your world. And for not sending me away." Silence settled, but it wasn't empty, it was warm, steady, full of unspoken understanding. The stars above shimmered brighter, as if approving of the fragile connection forming beneath them. Mira stepped a little closer, her voice barely above a breath as she said, "I want to learn everything, not just about the sky, but about the things you stopped believing in." Elias swallowed, feeling something open inside him, a slow, quiet unraveling of years of loneliness. Then stay, he whispered. At least until the next sunrise. And as they stood together under the vast, glowing sky, neither of them realized that tonight was only the beginning, that each star they looked at would unravel another truth, another wound, another memory, slowly guiding them toward a lesson neither of them knew they needed. The early hours of the night deepened into a velvet darkness by the time Elias and Mira began their slow walk back toward the cottage, lantern light swaying gently between them as the forest whispered with quiet life. But something had shifted in the air, something soft, something unspoken, like the space between them had drawn just a little closer. Mira held the coat around her tightly, still feeling the warmth from where it had rested on Elias's shoulders moments before, while Elias kept glancing at her from the corner of his eye, noticing how the starlight caught the strands of her hair, making her look almost unreal in the dim glow. Neither of them spoke at first. Silence stretched peacefully, as though the world understood they weren't ready to break the fragile magic of the night. It was Mira who finally let out a small, shaky laugh. "I can't believe how long it's been since I saw the sky like that," she said softly. Elias's lips curled into a faint smile. "The sky doesn't change," he replied. "We're the ones who drift too far from it." Mira kicked lightly at a pebble on the path, watching it skitter across the dirt. "Maybe I drifted too far from myself," she murmured. Elias slowed his steps just enough to look at her properly. "You came here," he said gently. "That tells me you're trying to find your way back." Mira didn't answer right away. She just looked ahead, her breathing steady but her eyes shining with something raw. After a moment she whispered, "I didn't tell you everything yesterday." Elias felt his heart tighten slightly. "You don't have to tell me anything before you're ready." She shook her head. "I don't want you to think I ran here out of confusion. I ran because I felt like I was disappearing in a life that wasn't mine anymore." Elias stopped walking entirely. The lantern light flickered across his face, revealing a tenderness that made Myra's chest ache. "You're not disappearing," he said firmly. "Life just overwhelmed your voice. But voices don't die, they wait." Mira lowered her eyes, clutching the locket against her heart. "My father used to say the same thing. But after he passed, everything became noise. Loud noise. And no matter how much I tried to hold on to myself, I slipped." Elias reached out slowly, hesitating before touching her locket with two gentle fingers. "Maybe the noise brought you here for a reason," he murmured. "Maybe the mountains were the silence you needed." They resumed walking, their steps falling into a natural rhythm. The cottage glowed warmly in the distance, a soft golden beacon among the dark trees. As they approached, Mira paused at the wooden steps, turning to Elias with a small, wistful smile. "Tonight meant something to me," she said quietly. Elias felt the words hit him deeper than he expected. "To me too," he replied. Mira stepped closer, her voice dropping even softer. "When I looked through the telescope, for a moment it felt like someone was calling me home." Elias inhaled sharply. "That's exactly what starlight does," he said. "It reaches across time just to remind us we're still part of something bigger." Inside the cottage, warmth wrapped around them like an embrace. Mira settled on the edge of the armchair while Elias stoked the fire, flames growing brighter, casting shadows across the wooden walls. Mira watched him closely, noticing the quiet strength in his posture, the way he carried sorrow like a second skin, but still found room to offer peace. "Elias," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" He turned, meeting her eyes. "Anything." She swallowed. "What did you mean earlier, when you said you stopped walking your path?" Elias's hand froze on the fireplace tool, and for a moment he didn't speak. Then he sat down across from her, elbows resting on his knees, fingers interlocked as though holding a memory carefully. "After my mentor died," he said slowly, "I lost my belief in purpose. Every night I looked at the sky and felt like the universe had abandoned me. I thought, if the one person who guided me could disappear, then maybe the stars had been lying all along." Myra's breath hitched softly. "Is that why you hid up here?" Elias gave a broken little laugh. "I didn't hide. I collapsed. And I convinced myself it was solitude." Mira leaned forward, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't lose the sky. You lost the part of yourself that trusted it." Elias looked at her, and something fragile flickered in his expression. "How do you trust again?" he asked, "when the person who taught you how is gone?" Mira reached out and gently placed her hand over his. "Maybe you trust by teaching someone else," she whispered. "Maybe you trust by letting someone in." The fire crackled softly between them, and Elias looked at her hand on his as though it were something sacred. A slow, trembling breath escaped him. "Myra, I haven't let anyone close for a very long time." She smiled sadly. "And I haven't let myself breathe for a very long time. Maybe we're both overdue." A gentle knock on the window startled them both. They turned just in time to see a bright streak of silver tear across the sky outside, a meteor slicing through the darkness. Mira gasped, standing suddenly as the glow illuminated her face with awe. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Elias rose too, moving beside her. "A meteor," he said softly. "A rare one. You don't get to witness that often." Mira pressed her hand to the glass. "It felt like something was guiding us." Elias looked at her, really looked at the optimism blooming slowly where fear once lived, at the courage forming in her voice, at the spark she had reawakened in him without even trying. "Maybe it was," he whispered. The meteor faded, leaving behind a stillness so pure it felt otherworldly. Mira leaned her forehead against the window, closing her eyes as a soft sigh left her lips. "I think I'm ready to let the sky in again," she said. Elias stood beside her, his voice barely more than breath. "Then tomorrow, we go deeper. There's more I want to show you." Mira turned to him, and for a moment they simply stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth, far enough that neither dared to cross the invisible line forming between them. And yet, within that space, something powerful took root, a connection neither of them fully understood, but both felt undeniably. As the fire crackled softly behind them and the meteor's glow faded from the horizon, the truth settled quietly in the air. This journey wasn't just about stars anymore. It was about two souls learning how to find themselves through each other, through the sky, and through the quiet spaces left by loss. And though neither of them said it aloud, they both sensed it deeply. Tomorrow would bring them closer to the heart of a story neither of them knew they were already writing together. The rain returned the next night, softer this time, like a whispered invitation, and Elias stepped outside with his lantern trembling in his hand, wondering if the voice from the storm would come again. The world smelled of wet earth and cold wind, and as he walked toward the observatory, his foot slipped slightly on the stone path, but he steadied himself, muttering that an astronomer shouldn't fear the dark or the rain. When he pushed open the observatory door, it groaned like an old guardian waking up, and the moment he lit the lamps inside, warm golden reflections danced across the domed ceiling, mingling with shadows that seemed far too alive for his comfort. He climbed the metal ladder, each step echoing, each breath heavier than the last, until he reached the telescope platform where rain droplets tapped rhythmically against the glass. Elias adjusted the telescope lenses with shaking fingers, telling himself that the stars would calm him. The stars always had. But when he pressed his eye to the viewfinder, his heart lurched because instead of a clear sky, he saw a strange flicker of light blinking in a pattern he had never seen before. He leaned back, wiped the fog from the lens, tried again, and the blinking returned, 3 short bursts, a long one, then a pause, repeating with perfect consistency. He whispered, barely able to swallow, that someone or something was signaling him, and his mind spun through every possibility, scientific and supernatural. The wind slipped through the open window, rustling the charts behind him, and suddenly he heard that soft voice again, the same one from the stormy night before, saying his name with a clarity that froze his spine. Elias turned sharply, lantern raised, searching the dark corners of the observatory, insisting that if someone was here, they needed to show themselves. But all he saw were shadows and the trembling reflection of his own fear. The voice spoke again, telling him not to be afraid, telling him that he had been watching the skies correctly, that he had seen what most people were too distracted to notice. Elias stepped closer to the window, gripping its cold frame as the rain touched his fingertips, and asked who was speaking to him, why they sounded like the wind and yet felt like a presence standing right behind him. The voice didn't answer immediately. Instead, the blinking light in the sky became brighter, sharper, almost urgent, and Elias felt his heartbeat sinking with the pulses as if someone was trying to guide him, instruct him. He whispered that he didn't understand, that he was just an astronomer who studied the stars, not someone meant for strange signs and mysterious voices. But the voice replied firmly that every watcher of the sky is chosen for a reason. Elias swallowed hard, his throat tight, and asked what reason, what purpose, what calling he was being pulled toward. The rain softened into mist, the clouds shifted just enough to reveal a faint shimmering trail across the sky, like a path drawn with light itself, and Elias stared at it with wide, frightened eyes because he knew he'd never seen anything like it in his years of studying the heavens. The voice whispered that this was only the beginning, that the signals he saw were the opening notes of a message meant for him alone. And Elias felt his legs weaken as he leaned against the telescope, overwhelmed by the weight of something he couldn't yet name. The lamps flickered, the walls seemed to breathe, and Elias said quietly that he didn't know if he was ready for any of this. But the voice responded with softness that readiness didn't matter because destiny rarely waits for approval. As the shimmering trail slowly faded, Elias stood alone in the observatory with the rain coming around him, his mind swirling with fear and wonder. knowing that the stars he loved had just become something far more complicated, and the signal blinking in the sky seemed to whisper that tomorrow night would demand something even greater from him. The sky remained restless the next evening, not in the violent way it had before, but in a strange expectant stillness that made Elias pace his small living room like a man waiting for a verdict. His tea sat untouched on the table, steam long gone, while the ticking clock on the wall sounded impossibly loud in the quiet. He kept glancing toward the door as if the storm itself might knock and ask to be let in. Finally, unable to sit any longer, he grabbed his coat and stepped outside, feeling the cool night air brush against his face like the breath of something unseen. The village was dark except for scattered lanterns glowing behind rain-speckled windows, and Elias walked past them with a sense of separation, realizing that nobody else knew what had spoken to him, and nobody else had seen the mysterious blinking light in the sky. When he reached the observatory hill, he paused at the base, swallowing hard as he whispered that maybe tonight wouldn't be like the others. Maybe the sky would stay quiet. Maybe the voice had been a trick of exhaustion. But the moment he reached the door, a soft gust of wind brushed against him, carrying with it a faint echo of his name, so faint that if his heart hadn't clenched, he might have dismissed it. He closed the door behind him, lit the lamps, and the room brightened just enough to reveal the familiar shapes of star charts, lenses, and stacks of notebooks filled with his scribbled observations. They grounded him, reminded him of who he was, and for a moment he pressed his hands against the wooden table, breathing deeply as if trying to anchor himself to something normal. Then the telescope platform creaked, a soft metal groan from above, and Elias nearly dropped the lantern. He steadied it, whispered to himself not to be foolish, and slowly climbed the ladder, each step feeling heavier than the last. When his head rose above the edge of the platform, he froze. His telescope was pointed upward by itself, angled directly toward the patch of sky where he had seen the blinking signal before. Elias whispered shakily that he hadn't touched it since last night, but the telescope stood firm, almost waiting. He approached it, his breath shallow, and hesitated before placing his eye to the viewfinder. The sky on the other side was disturbingly clear, the stars sharp, and after a few seconds a faint flicker appeared, then another, then the pattern he had seen the night before, 3 short bursts, one long, repeating in perfect rhythm. Elias exhaled slowly, his hands trembling on the metal frame, and asked aloud what the message meant, why it was directed at him. The voice came quietly, like a breeze slipping through his thoughts rather than entering through his ears, telling him that the sky remembers those who look up with sincerity. Elias staggered back, heart pounding, asking who was speaking, how they knew him, why they were hiding behind light and wind instead of showing themselves. The voice did not answer immediately, and for a long moment the only sound was the soft pattering of rain returning outside. Then, as if sensing his desperation, the voice spoke again, saying that not every presence can take a form he would understand, but that did not make it less real. Elias paced in a tight circle on the platform, clutching his coat, insisting that he was just a man, an astronomer, yes, but still just a man who charted stars, not someone chosen for cryptic cosmic messages. The voice whispered that being just a man was exactly why he was chosen, because ordinary people see truth with clear hearts. Elias leaned against the railing, staring at the sky where thin clouds drifted, revealing and concealing the blinking signal as though the heavens were breathing. He felt something inside him shift, not understanding, not acceptance, but a strange pull like curiosity wrapped in fear. The voice urged him to follow the pattern, to look deeper than the surface, saying the light was pointing him towards something that would change more than just his life. Elias shook his head, whispering that he wasn't ready for anything life-changing, but the blinking continued, steady and patient, as if the sky had all the time in the world to wait for him. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance, not threatening but calling, and Elias felt himself stepping closer to the telescope again, unable to resist. He murmured to the sky that he would try, he would listen, but he needed understanding, some clue. The voice softened, telling him that true understanding never arrives before the journey begins. As the wind brushed cold fingertips across his neck and the signal pulsed brighter for a moment, Elias stood trembling in the observatory, realizing with a strange ache that whatever path had opened before him, he had already taken the first step simply by showing up tonight. The next day moved painfully slow for Elias, every hour stretching itself thin like time was mocking him. The village felt different now, quieter, as if the world around him sensed he carried a secret too heavy for daylight. He tried to distract himself with ordinary things, sweeping the wooden floor, repairing a loose hinge on his front door, brewing tea he never drank, but everything felt hollow, like his life had shifted slightly out of alignment. Whenever he passed the window, his eyes drifted upward, drawn to the sky even though the sun was out and the stars invisible. He kept asking himself whether he imagined the voice, whether the blinking signal had been a trick of the storm. But every time he questioned it, he felt that same faint tremor in his chest, the one he only felt when the truth was close. By evening he found himself standing outside again, lantern in hand, staring at the path leading up to the observatory. He told himself he wouldn't go, he needed rest. He needed a break from the strange pull of the sky, but his feet started moving as if pulled by invisible threads. The air was colder tonight, sharp against his skin, and the grass shimmered with tiny beads of moisture from the earlier drizzle. When he reached the observatory door, he hesitated, holding the handle while his heart hammered like fists against his ribs. He whispered that he didn't want to face more unexplained voices or mysterious lights, but deep down he knew curiosity is a powerful force, one that doesn't leave a man alone once awakened. He stepped inside, lit the lamps, and the familiar warm glow filled the room. But something was different. A notebook lay open on the main table, his notebook, the one he had closed tightly the night before. He frowned, stepping closer, feeling the sting of cold air around the pages as if something had only just been there. On the open page, circled in pencil though he had no memory of drawing it, was the blinking pattern from the sky, 3 short, 1 long, repeated 6 times. Underneath it, in handwriting that was definitely not his, was a single sentence, "Follow the line of light." Elias backed away, breath sharp, eyes wide. He whispered that this was impossible, that no one had access here, that he always locked the door. His hands shook as he touched the mysterious writing, tracing each letter as if it would vanish. The moment his finger brushed the last word, a soft hum began vibrating through the room, low, steady, almost musical. He looked up in confusion, and then he heard the voice again, not from the wind this time, but from everywhere at once, filling the observatory like a presence that owned the air. It murmured that he had been given a direction, and now he needed to follow it. Elias spun slowly, searching the corners, the stairs, the shadows, whispering for the voice to show itself, to explain what it wanted from him. But the voice only repeated the same line, follow the line of light. He climbed the ladder almost on instinct, though his legs trembled so badly he nearly slipped on the last rung. When he reached the telescope platform, he felt the hum intensify beneath his feet. He approached the telescope and hesitated, afraid of what he might see. But when he looked through the lens, his breath caught in his throat. The stars seemed to rearrange themselves. Not literally, he told himself. That wasn't possible, but the pattern of them formed a faint glowing trail across the sky. A shimmering alignment stretching from one point of darkness to another. It was soft, subtle, but unmistakable, a path made of starlight. Elias whispered hoarsely that this wasn't natural. This wasn't in any chart he had ever studied. And the voice responded gently that some maps are revealed only to those willing to see beyond the known. He stared at the celestial trail, heart pounding, feeling as though the universe itself had taken him by the shoulders and turned him toward a doorway he didn't even know existed. He whispered that he didn't understand where the path led, and the voice answered with a shadow of warmth that understanding comes later, first comes trust. The hum faded, the air calmed, but the path of stars remained bright in the lens, waiting for him. Elias lowered the telescope slowly, feeling dizzy, overwhelmed, terrified, but also undeniably drawn. He looked out the window at the sky with his own eyes, unable to see the glowing trail without the telescope, yet knowing it was there. And for the first time since the strange encounters began, he said into the quiet room that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to follow. Elias barely slept, twisting in his bed as the image of the star trail lingered behind his eyelids like a brand he could not wash away. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that soft shimmering line stretching across the sky, calling to him with a patience that felt ancient. When dawn seeped through his window, pale and soft, he sat up with a tired groan, running his hands through his hair and whispering that he couldn't keep living with this constant pull. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The sky had chosen him, and something inside him, fear, curiosity, destiny, he couldn't tell, was choosing it right back. He spent the morning walking through the village, trying to convince himself that he was still part of this ordinary world. Children ran along the muddy road, women hung damp clothes outside their small houses, and the blacksmith hammered something loudly behind his workshop. The normalcy felt comforting, grounding, yet also strangely distant, like Elias was watching life through a thin glass wall. When the baker waved and asked if he was feeling all right, Elias forced a smile, saying he was fine, though his voice cracked just enough for the baker to look at him with quiet concern. By afternoon the clouds thickened again, heavy with the promise of another quiet rain. Elias returned home and sat at his wooden desk, staring at the telescope sketches he'd been drawing since he was a young boy. He ran his fingers across the yellowed paper, whispering that all he ever wanted was to study the stars, not be summoned by them. He looked toward the observatory hill through his window, and even in the daylight it felt like it was calling him by name. When night finally arrived, he didn't resist the pull this time. He grabbed his lantern, wrapped the scarf around his neck, and began walking toward the observatory with a slow, steady steady determination replacing his previous panic. The air was damp, the grass slick, and mist curled low around the ground like soft white smoke. Each breath Elias took felt heavier than the last, as though he was stepping deeper into something sacred. Inside the observatory, the lamps flickered to life as he lit them, casting long shadows that swayed with the gentle movement of the flame. The notebook from the night before still lay open, the message staring at him, "Follow the line of light." Elias closed the book slowly, whispering that he was trying, he truly was, but he needed more. He needed to know what the stars wanted from him. He climbed the ladder and stepped onto the telescope platform, gripping the railing as the familiar hum rose again, vibrating through the metal beneath his feet. The sound made his heart beat faster, not with fear this time, but with a strange sense of anticipation. He positioned himself before the telescope and looked through the lens. The star trail was brighter tonight, no longer faint, but alive, shimmering with motion like flowing water frozen in the sky. It stretched farther than before, vanishing into a distant cluster of stars that glowed with an unusual intensity. Elias whispered, "Where are you leading me?" And the moment those words left his mouth, the air behind him shifted. A soft light thin as a thread appeared outside the window. Elias flinched, stumbling backward, eyes wide. The thread of light floated in the air like a small wandering spirit, pulsing gently. It drifted slowly toward the ladder, toward him, as if beckoning him to follow. Elias pressed himself against the railing, breath trembling, whispering that this was impossible, that light couldn't move like this, couldn't think like this. But the glowing thread hovered patiently, warm and soft, and as he stared at it, he felt a calm settle over him like a blanket being placed on shaking shoulders. The voice came again, closer, clearer, almost human now. It told him the path had begun to reveal itself on earth as it had in the sky. Elias, trembling but drawn forward, reached out a hesitant finger toward the floating strand. The moment his skin touched it, a warm surge rushed up his arm and into his chest, flooding him with an overwhelming mix of fear, awe, and something he couldn't name. His knees nearly buckled, and he grabbed the railing to steady himself, gasping for breath. Images flickered in his mind, quick, blurry pieces of a place he didn't recognize. A mountain covered in snow. A dark lake reflecting the stars. A stone structure half buried in earth. And then a final image, the door of light standing in the middle of the darkness, waiting. Elias jerked his hand back with a cry, stumbling as the glowing thread faded gently into nothingness. He collapsed onto the platform floor, chest heaving, staring into the empty air where the thread had been. He whispered that he didn't understand any of it, that he wasn't strong enough for this, that he was just a man who loved the stars, not someone meant for visions and cosmic doorways. But the voice, softer than ever, told him he was chosen not because he was strong, but because he was willing to look deeper than others. And as the hum slowly faded and the night settled into a deep quiet, Elias realized with a sinking, trembling breath that whatever lay ahead was no longer just in the sky. It was coming down to meet him. Elias barely remembered climbing down from the telescope platform, his legs unsteady, mind racing, heart pounding as if it wanted to escape his chest entirely. The warmth of the lanterns inside the observatory felt hollow against the storm of thoughts coursing through him. He sank into the old wooden chair, gripping the arms so tightly that his knuckles turned white, and whispered over and over that he was not ready for any of this. Not the glowing thread, not the visions, not the whispers of a voice that felt neither near nor far, but somehow inside him. Yet even as he spoke, a tremor of something, curiosity, hope, or perhaps the smallest spark of courage stirred in his chest, refusing to be smothered by fear. He pressed his forehead into his hands, trying to ground himself, when a soft knock sounded on the door. His breath caught. Elias? Myra's voice, delicate and hesitant, floated through the gap. He blinked, startled to realize he had been holding his breath. Myra, he said, voice raw. It's late. She stepped inside, dripping from the light rain outside, eyes wide with concern. I don't know why, but I had to come. I had to see if you were okay. Elias tried to speak, but his chest tightened. He gestured toward the telescope platform, then shrugged helplessly. I saw something tonight. Something I don't understand. Mira nodded, as if she already knew there was no way to explain. Show me, she whispered. He hesitated, then led her to the platform. The telescope rested where he had left it, dust motes floating lazily in the lamplight. He adjusted the lens again, and together they peered into the sky. The shimmering trail had returned, brighter than ever, stretching across the horizon like a ribbon of silver fire. Mira gasped softly. It's beautiful, she whispered, but Elias noticed something deeper in her tone, a tremor of awe mixed with fear. It moves, he murmured, voice barely audible. It wants me to follow it. Myra's hand brushed against his arm. Then, maybe you should. Maybe this is why it chose you. Elias swallowed hard, staring into her eyes. I don't know if I can. I'm just a man who studies stars, not someone who follows messages from the sky. Mira smiled faintly, softly. And yet here you are. You've already taken the first step. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass, filling the room with a rhythm that felt alive, like a heartbeat of the night itself. Elias closed his eyes and whispered that he feared failure, that he feared what might happen if he stepped too far into the unknown. Myra's fingers found his hand, warm and steady. Courage isn't the absence of fear, she said. It's moving forward even when fear is standing in the way. Elias opened his eyes and looked back through the telescope. The thread of starlight seemed to pulse, almost like it was breathing, guiding him towards something unseen. His voice shook as he asked softly, what if I'm not ready for what's out there? Mira squeezed his hand. You'll never feel fully ready. That's why you have to trust yourself. For a long moment, they stood together, the silence between them filled only by the rain and the faint hum that seemed to come from the telescope itself. Then Elias whispered, more to himself than to her, all right. I'll try. I'll follow it. Mira smiled, relief and admiration mingling in her gaze. Then I'll be here, she said quietly. You won't have to do it alone. Outside, the storm began to ease, and the clouds parted slightly to reveal stars that sparkled like scattered diamonds. The shimmering trail pulsed one last time before fading into the distance, leaving only the endless night sky. Elias lowered the telescope slowly, heart racing, and looked at Mira. "Tomorrow," he said, voice steady now, "we begin the journey." Mira nodded, a quiet determination lighting her face. And in that moment, Elias realized that he wasn't just following a trail of light in the sky, he was stepping into a story larger than himself, one that would test him, change him, and perhaps even heal parts of his soul he didn't know were broken. The observatory fell silent, the rain softened to a whisper, and the night waited patiently, as if holding its breath, ready to watch the first step of a journey neither of them could fully imagine. The morning sunlight spilled softly over the valley, painting the forest with a gentle gold that seemed almost unreal after the storm-filled nights. Elias woke with a weight in his chest, a mixture of anticipation and unease pressing against him like the walls of the observatory itself. He ran a hand over his face, trying to shake off the remnants of restless dreams, but even as he rose, he knew he couldn't ignore what had happened. The thread of light, the blinking stars, the voice, all of it demanded action, even if his mind still quivered at the thought of stepping fully into the unknown. He found Mira already at the kitchen table, quietly sipping tea, the steam curling like wisps of calm in the morning air. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, neither of them spoke, each sensing the fragile tension hovering between excitement and fear. "You're awake early," Elias murmured. Mira smiled faintly. "I couldn't sleep," she said simply. "I kept thinking about last night, about the stars and that thread." Elias nodded, realizing she, too, felt the pull of something greater, something impossible to explain, yet impossible to ignore. They walked together toward the observatory, the forest alive with the quiet songs of birds and the rustle of leaves in a gentle morning breeze. The air smelled of wet earth, moss, and rain-soaked wood, and for Elias, every familiar scent seemed charged with new meaning. "Are you ready?" Mira asked softly as they reached the base of the hill. Elias hesitated, feeling the familiar tremor of doubt creep into his chest. But then he looked at her and saw the quiet determination there, and he realized he wasn't facing this path alone. "I think I am," he whispered, "as long as you're with me." Inside the observatory, the lamps cast a warm glow over the star charts and notebooks, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily through the air. Elias moved toward the telescope with careful reverence, adjusting lenses and checking the alignment while Mira watched, her eyes tracing the familiar objects around the room that had suddenly become sacred. "I never realized how much this place holds," she said softly. "It's more than just stars. It's memory, history, dreams." Elias looked at her and nodded slowly. "It's everything I've ever been, and everything I've been afraid to face." When he raised the telescope to the sky, he held his breath. The star trail had returned, faint but unmistakable, pulsing gently as if it had been waiting for him. He whispered that he could follow it, that he could try, but he needed guidance. Myra's hand brushed his arm. "Listen to yourself," she said, "and listen to the sky. Sometimes they speak together." Elias nodded, drawing in a slow breath, feeling the old fear push against the surge of courage building in his chest. He focused on the line of light, tracing its path across the sky, letting his eyes follow it even as his mind resisted. A soft hum began to fill the room, vibrating through the floor and walls, wrapping around him like a song he had known in another life. Elias closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound guide him, feeling the thread of destiny pulling him forward. He whispered that he didn't know where this would lead, that he didn't know if he was strong enough, and the voice responded, not with words this time, but with warmth that seeped into his bones. Strength comes from the willingness to take the first step. Elias opened his eyes, heart pounding, and stepped closer to the telescope. Mira mirrored his movements, standing silently beside him, her presence steady and reassuring. The trail of light shimmered more clearly now, as if acknowledging his courage, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed to match the beat of his own heart. Elias whispered a quiet promise to himself. He would follow the path. He would not turn away, no matter how uncertain or frightening it became. The wind drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of rain and the faint hum of possibility. Elias looked at Mira, seeing in her eyes the reflection of his own resolve. "We begin tonight," he said softly. Mira nodded. Together. And as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting the first shadows of evening across the clearing, the observatory seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the two of them to step fully into the journey the stars had been guiding them toward. A journey that would test every fear, every hope, and every hidden corner of their hearts. The hours passed slowly, each tick of the clock stretching like the space between heartbeats, and by nightfall Elias found himself standing once more at the base of the observatory hill, lantern in hand, the forest around him alive with the gentle rustle of wind and the distant call of an owl. Mira walked beside him, quiet but steady, her presence a calm tether against the storm of anticipation thrumming in his chest. The clouds above were scattered, allowing glimpses of the starlit sky, and Elias felt the familiar pull, the invisible thread tugging him toward the telescope platform where the unknown awaited. He whispered that he still felt unready, that the last visions and the shimmering trail had left him shaken, but Mira squeezed his hand, reminding him that courage is rarely born from certainty. Inside the observatory, the warm glow of lanterns cast long, trembling shadows across the walls. Elias moved carefully, almost ritualistically, arranging lenses, adjusting the telescope, and checking the star charts as if aligning the room itself could somehow align his fear. Mira observed him quietly, her eyes tracing the marks of years past, of a life devoted to the sky and yet haunted by absence. "You've held this place together for so long," she said softly, "even when it broke you inside." Elias looked at her, a faint shadow crossing his face. "I thought I had lost the path," he admitted. "I thought the stars had forgotten me. But now I see they've been waiting, just like you said, for me to look again." He climbed the ladder to the telescope platform, each step a struggle against the tremor in his legs, and positioned the instrument toward the heavens. The star trail shimmered faintly at first, hesitant, almost shy, then pulsed brighter as if recognizing him. Elias whispered under his breath, asking where it led, what it wanted from him, and for a moment, the observatory was filled with the same soft hum he had heard before, vibrating through the floor, through the walls, through his very bones. Mira leaned close, her voice barely audible. "Follow it. Trust it." Elias nodded, taking a slow, steadying breath. "I will." As he peered through the telescope, the trail of light stretched farther than before, a winding path across the sky that seemed alive, almost breathing. Images flickered in his mind, mountains glimmering under moonlight, a dark lake reflecting the stars, a faint silhouette of a doorway bathed in soft light. His pulse quickened, fear mingling with awe, and he whispered, This is bigger than anything I've known." Myra's hand rested gently on his arm. "And yet it calls to you," she said. Elias felt a shiver run through him as if the universe itself had reached inside him. A sudden gust of wind rattled the open windows, carrying the faint scent of rain and something else he couldn't name, something ancient and wise. The hum of the observatory intensified, and Elias realized he no longer feared it. Instead, he felt a strange, unexplainable certainty. The path was meant for him, and the stars were guiding, not threatening. Myra's gaze met his, steady and unwavering, and for the first time he allowed himself to truly believe that he could follow, that he could step into the unknown without losing himself. He adjusted the telescope to track the line of light, breathing in sync with its pulse, and whispered quietly to Mira, "Tonight, we see where it leads." She nodded, her eyes reflecting both the glow of the lamps and the starlight beyond. The hum faded slightly, leaving a delicate silence that seemed filled with promise. Outside, the night stretched wide and endless, but inside the observatory, Elias felt a spark of clarity, a fragile, trembling courage that told him the journey had truly begun. And as they stood together, side by side, watching the glowing path stretch across the heavens, neither of them spoke. Words were unnecessary. The sky had sent its invitation, and they were ready to answer, one step at a time. Night settled over the valley like a heavy velvet curtain, and Elias felt it pressing in on him as he climbed the observatory ladder, lantern swaying gently in his hand. The familiar hum hummed faintly beneath his feet, a vibration that seemed almost alive, almost patient, like the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to act. Mira followed silently, her steps light on the wooden floor, her presence a steady anchor against the storm of fear and anticipation coursing through his chest. Elias paused at the top, gripping the telescope, whispering that he didn't know if he could face whatever lay beyond the trail of starlight tonight. Myra's hand brushed his arm. "You're not alone," she said softly. "Whatever it is, we face it together." He exhaled slowly, nodding, and positioned the telescope toward the sky. The thread of light shimmered in the lens, clearer and more alive than ever, stretching across the cosmos like a river of silver fire. Elias blinked rapidly, trying to process what he saw. Images flooded his mind again, mountains dusted with snow, a dark reflective lake, a doorway of faint glowing light standing alone in the shadow of an endless field. His fingers trembled on the telescope, and he whispered that he wasn't ready, that he wasn't certain he could bear what the universe wanted to show him. The voice returned, softer now, not demanding but guiding, telling him that readiness is a lie the world tells to the fearful, and that action, courage, and trust are the only keys to understanding. Mira leaned close, her eyes following his gaze through the lens. "Elias, you've already started," she said quietly. "Look at what's out there. The stars are waiting for you to move, to step forward." Elias swallowed, the lump in his throat nearly choking him. He whispered, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Myra's hand found his, holding it with gentle warmth. "Follow it," she said simply. "And trust yourself to know the way." A wind rattled the windows, carrying the faint scent of rain and something older, something impossible to name. The hum beneath the telescope grew stronger, vibrating through his body, steadying his fear into focus. Elias realized the thread of light wasn't just a line in the sky, it was a guide, a path that demanded belief, patience, and courage. He exhaled shakily and whispered, "I'll try. I'll step forward, even if I'm afraid." Myra's eyes softened with quiet pride. "That's all it asks," she said. The trail of light pulsed gently, and Elias felt the rhythm in his chest, syncing with his heartbeat as if the universe itself had reached inside him. The images in his mind sharpened, a stone door standing alone in a field, flanked by mountains and mirrored lakes, a sense of waiting, of calling, as if the world itself had arranged this path for him. His fear began to give way to wonder, and he realized that whatever lay ahead would challenge him. Yes, but it also promised revelation, growth, and a truth larger than any star chart he had ever studied. Elias lowered the telescope slowly, turning to Mira with a trembling smile. "It's time," he whispered. "We follow it." Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lamps and the faint shimmer of starlight. The observatory was silent, save for the faint hum and the echo of their steady breathing. Outside, the night stretched infinitely, dark and mysterious, yet filled with possibilities, as if every star was a hand extended toward them, urging them forward. And for the first time since the strange events began, Elias felt something he hadn't in years, certainty. Not of the path itself, not of the danger or the unknown, but certainty that he would not turn away, that he would face whatever the stars revealed. Together, with Mira by his side, he stepped into the night, ready to follow the line of light, ready to step into a story the universe had been quietly writing for him all along. The night air was cool and sharp as Elias and Mira stepped outside the observatory, the soft glow of lanterns fading behind them while the sky above stretched endlessly, filled with stars that shimmered like scattered diamonds. The trail of light they had followed through the telescope now pulsed faintly across the heavens, guiding them like a delicate thread that promised both wonder and danger. Elias tightened his grip on his coat, feeling the weight of fear and anticipation press against his chest. But Myra's presence beside him was steady, grounding, reminding him that he was not facing this path alone. He whispered that he still didn't understand, that he still felt unready for whatever lay ahead, but Mira squeezed his hand gently. "None of us are ever fully ready," she said. "We step forward anyway." They climbed the small hill leading away from the observatory, each step quiet in the misty night, the scent of damp earth and rain filling their lungs. Elias's thoughts raced with questions he didn't have answers for. Where would the trail lead? What waited at the end? Could he trust what the stars revealed? But with every pulse of the shimmering thread in the sky, he felt the invisible pull grow stronger, tugging him forward despite the tremor of fear. Mira glanced at him, eyes soft. "Look at it," she whispered, pointing upward. The thread of light flickered and shifted, as if acknowledging their resolve, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed to match their heartbeat. As they reached a small clearing, the wind picked up, rustling the branches around them, and Elias shivered despite his coat. Mira brushed a wet strand of hair from her face and smiled faintly. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely audible over the whispering breeze. Elias Elias nodded, eyes fixed on the trail of light stretching across the horizon. Beautiful and terrifying, he murmured. Mira laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in the rain. That's life, isn't it? Fear and wonder, wrapped together. They continued walking in silence, letting the trail guide them, until the faint outline of a distant hill emerged through the mist. The thread of light stretched toward it, glowing brighter, almost urgent. Elias felt his pulse quicken, chest tightening with anticipation. It's leading us there, he whispered, more to himself than to Mira. She nodded. Then we follow, she said. No matter what we find. As they approached the hill, the wind shifted again, carrying the soft hum that had filled the observatory. It vibrated through the soles of their feet, the air around them, and even through their chests, reminding them that the path was alive, that it had purpose, and that it demanded courage. Elias stopped for a moment, closing his eyes, letting the hum fill him, steadying his trembling hands. I've never done anything like this before, he admitted. I don't know if I can. Myra's hand found his again. You can. You already are. You just have to trust the path and yourself. The hilltop revealed a small, flat plateau, dew slick underfoot, where the trail of light shimmered strongest. Elias felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if he had been here in a dream long ago. He whispered, I feel like I've been waiting for this. Mira nodded silently, eyes wide with awe. The night around them seemed to hold its breath, the stars above watching, waiting. And in that quiet, suspended moment, Elias realized that this journey was no longer just about the stars, or the mysterious thread, or the voice guiding him. It was about discovering courage he didn't know he had, about trusting the unseen, and about stepping forward into the unknown, hand in hand with someone who understood the weight and wonder of the path beside him. The trail pulsed brighter once more, inviting them forward, and Elias took a trembling step onto it, Mira following closely. Together, they began walking into the night, into the story the universe had been waiting to reveal. The plateau stretched before them like a quiet stage under the endless night sky, dew glistening faintly on the grass, each blade catching the soft light of the shimmering trail. Elias paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the hum beneath his feet, as if the earth itself were alive and watching, waiting for his next step. Mira stood beside him, her hand still in his, warm and steady, a quiet reassurance against the pounding of his heart. It feels different here, he whispered. Like the world is holding its breath. Mira nodded. Like it knows we're about to see something important, she said softly, her eyes reflecting the faint starlight. They began moving forward along the trail, each step slow and deliberate, ears attuned to the soft hum that seemed to guide them. The mist swirled around their ankles, curling like ghostly fingers that urged them onward. Elias felt his fear pressing against him, sharp and insistent, but with every pulse of light underfoot, that fear softened into a strange, thrilling anticipation. He whispered to himself that he had never felt so alive, so small, and yet so necessary in the vastness of the night. Myra's presence beside him made the world feel steadier, the path less terrifying, and yet still impossible to fully understand. As they walked, the thread of light grew stronger, shimmering in patterns that seemed almost like messages, shifting subtly as if aware of their thoughts and hesitations. Elias's pulse quickened. "It's responding," he said, breath trembling. Myra's eyes widened. "Like it knows we're watching, like it's alive." He nodded slowly. "I've never seen anything like it. Not in all my years of studying the stars." The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain and something indefinably old, almost sacred. The hum intensified, resonating through the soles of their feet, threading through their bones, and Elias felt a mixture of awe and fear so strong it made his legs shake. Ahead, a faint glow began to emerge from the mist, soft at first, then growing warmer and brighter with every step. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and earth, and Elias realized that the glow was not from the stars, it was something else, something waiting for them at the end of the path. He whispered, voice barely audible, "Do you see that?" Mira nodded, her grip tightening on his hand. "Yes, whatever it is, it's been waiting for us." The trail led them closer, and the glow resolved into a doorway of light, standing alone on the edge of the plateau, framed by the dark silhouettes of distant trees. It pulsed gently, as if breathing, inviting them in. Elias swallowed hard, chest tight, and whispered, This is what we've been following." Mira looked at him, eyes wide but steady. "Then we step through it," she said simply. "Together." He took a deep breath, feeling the hum vibrate through him one last time, grounding his fear and lending courage to his trembling legs. "Together," he echoed. And with that, Elias stepped forward, his hand clasped tightly in Myra's, and crossed the threshold of light. The world seemed to ripple around them, the night sky bending and shimmering as if reality itself was rearranging to welcome them into the next chapter of the story, a story that promised discovery, challenge, and a revelation neither of them could yet imagine. The doorway pulsed once more, bright and welcoming, and Elias felt a strange certainty settle deep in his chest. They had begun something far greater than themselves, a journey that would test every fear, illuminate hidden truths, and forever change the way they saw the universe and themselves. The moment Elias and Mira stepped through the doorway of light, the world around them shifted like water rippling under a sudden stone. The cool night air of the plateau vanished, replaced by a faint warmth that seemed to seep into their bones, and the hum they had felt beneath their feet transformed into a gentle vibration that resonated through the air, through their very being. The landscape before them was unlike anything Elias had ever seen, a vast field stretched endlessly, covered with soft, silvery grass that shimmered under a sky filled with constellations unfamiliar and breathtaking. The stars above were brighter, closer, and their light flowed down in faint ribbons that intertwined with the landscape, as if the heavens themselves had descended to meet the earth. Elias swallowed hard, chest tightening. This isn't real," he whispered. Mira stepped forward, eyes wide with awe, her fingers still entwined with his. "It feels alive," she breathed. "Like the whole place is watching us." Elias nodded slowly, taking careful steps onto the shimmering grass, the light beneath their feet pulsing softly with each movement. Every sound they made, every breath, every footfall seemed to echo across the expanse in perfect harmony with the hum that filled the air. "It's like we've stepped into a dream," Elias said, voice trembling. Mira smiled faintly. "A dream that wants to teach us something," she said. As they moved deeper into the field, a gentle breeze carried scents that were impossible to name: earth, rain, distant fire, and something older, something sacred. The sky above shifted subtly, constellations arranging themselves into patterns that seemed to guide their path, and Elias realized that the thread of light they had been following had not ended at the doorway it had transformed, now weaving through the stars above in intricate, glowing patterns. He whispered, "It's leading us, again." Mira nodded. "Then we follow," she said, determination steady in her voice. They walked for what felt like hours, though time seemed meaningless in this strange, luminous world. The trail of stars pulsed, brightening at moments when they hesitated, almost encouraging them to trust, to continue. Then, in the distance, a faint reflection shimmered a dark lake that mirrored the sky perfectly, the stars above dancing on its surface as if the heavens themselves had descended to touch the earth. Elias stopped, heart hammering. "The lake, it's like the sky is holding itself here," he murmured. Myra's eyes reflected the mirrored constellations. "Maybe this is where it wants us to understand," she said softly. As they approached the lake, a sense of quiet reverence settled over them. The surface was perfectly still, yet the faint ripples of starlight pulsed across it, responding to their presence. Elias knelt and traced a finger over the water, watching the reflection shimmer and shift. He whispered, "It's alive. Not just the stars, not just the trail, it's this whole place." Mira knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's waiting for us to see it, to understand it," she said. The voice came again, soft and near, echoing in their minds rather than in the air. "Look deeper," it said. "The truth is reflected, but only for those willing to see beyond fear." Elias swallowed, feeling the weight of the journey pressing against him, and nodded. He realized that this was more than a path of light, it was a path of self-discovery, of courage, and of trust in the unknown. Mira squeezed his shoulder. "We're ready," she whispered. And so, together, they leaned closer to the mirrored lake, hearts pounding, breath held, knowing that the reflections on the surface held the answers, the lessons, and the revelations that the stars had been guiding them toward all along. The night pulsed around them, alive and expectant, waiting for them to uncover the first truth of this luminous, otherworldly place. Elias and Mira knelt by the edge of the mirrored lake, their reflections dancing with the starlight above, flickering in patterns that seemed almost intentional, as if the lake itself were breathing, alive and aware. The hum that had guided them since the observatory now resonated in the air like a pulse, a heartbeat of the world they had stepped into, and Elias felt it deep in his chest, syncing with his own. He whispered, voice barely audible, "It's like it's trying to tell us something, to show us something hidden." Mira nodded, eyes wide with awe. "Then we have to look, really look," she said softly. "Not just at what's visible, but beyond it." Tentatively, Elias extended a hand toward the surface of the water. The moment his fingers brushed it, a ripple spread outward, distorting the reflection, and the stars above shimmered in response. Images formed on the water, visions of places they had never seen, mountains crowned with snow, forests glowing under moonlight, and structures carved from stone that seemed impossibly old. Elias's breath caught. These aren't just reflections," he whispered. "They're memories, or warnings, or messages. Mira reached forward, tracing a pattern in the water that pulsed faintly under her touch. "It's guiding us," she said. "Every ripple is a step, every reflection a clue." The voice returned, soft but firm, threading through their minds rather than speaking aloud. "Courage is required, but not the absence of fear. Fear is the mirror of truth. Look closely, and the path will reveal itself." Elias swallowed, heart pounding, staring at the rippling water. He realized that each reflection was more than a vision, it was a mirror of his own soul, showing doubts, regrets, and hidden strength in equal measure. He whispered, I see things about myself I didn't want to face." Myra's hand found his, steady and grounding. "That's why we're here," she said. "To see, to understand, to move forward." The water pulsed again, and suddenly a pathway of faint, glowing stepping stones appeared, stretching across the lake toward a distant island where a faint glow promised the next revelation. Elias hesitated, fear pressing against him like a tangible force. "It's too far," he murmured. Myra's eyes met his. "It's exactly far enough," she said. "We'll take it one step at a time. Together." He nodded, drawing a deep breath, letting the pulse of the lake and the hum in the air steady him. Step by step, they moved across the glowing stones, the water beneath reflecting fragments of their fears and courage in every ripple. The night sky above swirled with stars, forming constellations unfamiliar yet strangely comforting, guiding them as if the heavens themselves had folded down to walk beside them. Elias whispered with each step, affirming his resolve, I trust the path. I trust myself." Mira mirrored him, her voice a soft echo, "I trust, we trust." As they reached the center of the lake, the island rose before them, bathed in a warm, inviting light. The reflection in the water shimmered one final time, revealing not only the path they had taken but the choices they had made to arrive here, the moments of doubt, of courage, of trust, all converging into this one point. Elias exhaled, chest tight, and whispered, "We're here, finally." Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. "And yet, this is only the beginning," she said. The hum softened, the night held its breath, and the stars above pulsed gently in approval. Elias realized with a quiet awe that the lake, the path, the island, they were more than a test or a vision. They were a reflection of what the journey demanded: courage to face the unknown, trust in the unseen, and the willingness to discover truths about themselves they had never imagined. And as they stepped onto the island, hand in hand, Elias felt a trembling certainty, whatever awaited them here, whatever lessons, revelations, or challenges lay ahead, they would face it together, guided by the light of the stars and the strength they had found within themselves. The island stretched out before Elias and Mira like a quiet sanctuary, bathed in a soft golden glow that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The shimmering grass beneath their feet sparkled faintly, as though each blade held a fragment of starlight. The hum that had guided them from the observatory now vibrated gently through the island, steady and calm, a heartbeat that reminded them they had arrived somewhere sacred. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the cool warmth of the light brush against his skin, and whispered, "It feels alive. As if it knows we've come." Mira nodded, her eyes scanning the expanse. "Not just alive," she said softly, aware, waiting. They moved forward slowly, each step deliberate, aware that every footfall sent ripples of energy through the ground. In the center of the island, a structure emerged, a small archway carved from pale stone, etched with patterns that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the hum. Elias felt his chest tighten, a mixture of awe and fear pressing against him. "The doorway again," he whispered. "Another threshold, another test." Mira placed her hand gently on his arm. "Then we cross it," she said simply. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." As they approached, the air seemed to thrum with anticipation, carrying the faint scent of rain, earth, and something indefinably ancient. Elias reached out, brushing a finger over the etched symbols on the archway. The moment he touched them, the light pulsed brighter, flowing through his hand and up his arm, sending shivers of energy through his body. The patterns on the stone began to shift, forming shapes that mirrored constellations above, connecting the heavens and the island in a network of glowing lines. He whispered, voice trembling, "It's communicating. Showing me, guiding me." Mira stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "It's not just showing," she said softly. "It's asking. Asking us to understand, to accept, to move forward." Elias swallowed hard, the weight of everything pressing in the journey through the observatory, the plateau, the lake, the glowing stones, and now this. He realized that each stage had been more than a path or a test. It had been a mirror, reflecting courage, fear, and trust back at him. And now, at this archway, the final reflection awaited. The hum swelled gently, and the light from the symbols spread across the archway, forming a doorway of radiant energy. Elias hesitated, glancing at Mira. This feels like the moment everything changes," he whispered. Mira squeezed his hand. "Then we step through it," she said, voice calm and resolute. Elias nodded, drawing in a deep, steadying breath, and together they moved forward. The moment they passed through the archway, the world shifted once more. The island around them dissolved into threads of shimmering light, stretching upward into the sky, connecting with the constellations above. Elias felt his chest expand, the hum resonating through him completely, as if he were no longer standing on solid ground but floating between earth and stars. Myra's hand remained in his, grounding him even as reality itself seemed to bend and pulse with energy. In that space, suspended between heaven and earth, Elias realized the truth he had been seeking all along. The journey was never about reaching a destination. It was about discovering the courage to trust, the strength to face the unknown, and the wisdom to see beyond fear. Mira squeezed his hand once more, and he whispered, "We made it, together." And as the light swirled around them, Elias knew with a deep, steady certainty that the universe had shown him not just the stars, the paths, or the reflections, but the most profound lesson of all, that the greatest discoveries are not in what lies ahead, but in the courage to walk the path and the trust to see it through, hand in hand with those who stand beside us. Elias and Mira floated in the radiant space between the island and the stars, the shimmering threads of light wrapping around them like a soft, pulsing embrace. Time seemed to stretch and bend, every second feeling both infinite and fleeting. Elias's heart pounded, a mix of awe, fear, and exhilaration that made his chest ache with the intensity of it. beyond anything I've imagined," he whispered, voice trembling. Mira nodded, eyes wide, reflecting the endless ribbons of light above. "It's like the universe is alive," she said softly. "Like it's breathing around us, guiding us, waiting for us to understand." The threads of light began to shift, forming patterns that resembled constellations yet moved with purpose, weaving a luminous path that stretched into the distance. Elias realized it wasn't just the stars or the island, they were connected, part of something far greater, a network of energy, knowledge, and memory flowing through the cosmos. He swallowed hard, chest tight. "It wants us to follow it, to go deeper," he whispered. Myra's hand tightened around his. "Then we do," she said. "Step by step. Together." They began moving along the glowing path, each step resonating with a soft hum that pulsed through their bodies. As they advanced, visions flickered in the light, moments from Elias's past, both joyful and painful, moments of doubt and courage, fleeting memories of dreams he had forgotten. The threads of light wove around these visions, amplifying them, showing him how every choice, every fear, and every act of trust had led him to this exact moment. Elias's breath caught. "It's showing me, my life, everything that brought me here," he murmured. Mira watched silently, understanding that the path was teaching, guiding, not just showing. Ahead, the path narrowed and rose, forming a gentle slope that led toward a luminous horizon where a faint, radiant doorway shimmered with soft golden light. Elias felt a tremor of doubt, fear that he might not be strong enough, but the voice returned, gentle yet insistent, threading through his mind. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it." He exhaled shakily and whispered, "That I have to go. I have to trust the path." Mira squeezed his hand. "And I'll be with you," she said. As they approached the doorway, the light pulsed brighter, enveloping them in warmth and energy that made every hair on their skin stand on end. Elias realized that crossing this threshold would mean stepping fully into the unknown, leaving behind the familiar world of Earth and stars. But he also understood that the journey had prepared him, every fear faced, every choice made, had strengthened him for this moment. Myra's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Elias nodded, drawing a deep, steadying breath. "I am, with you." Together, they stepped forward into the radiant doorway. The threads of light wrapped around them, lifting them gently, carrying them upward, and the familiar hum crescendoed into a harmonious chorus that resonated through every fiber of their beings. The world outside dissolved, leaving only the infinite expanse of luminous energy, and Elias understood that this was more than a place, it was a revelation, a space where courage, trust, and understanding merged into something eternal. And as they floated into the unknown, hand in hand, Elias felt a profound sense of clarity wash over him. The journey was never about finding a destination. It was about discovering the depth of courage within, the power of trust, and the truth that no one walks the path alone when they are willing to open their hearts to the light guiding them forward. Elias and Mira emerged from the doorway of light into a vast expanse that seemed to exist between reality and dream. The air shimmered with soft golden energy, and beneath their feet, the ground was no longer solid but a lattice of glowing threads that pulsed in rhythm with their own heartbeats. Elias's chest tightened with awe and fear, and he whispered, "It's beautiful and terrifying all at once." Mira glanced around, eyes wide, reflecting the dancing light. "It's a place of truth," she said softly. "A place that shows us who we really are." The threads beneath them shifted subtly as they walked, forming patterns that echoed moments from their lives, memories of doubt, courage, and connection woven into the glowing strands. Elias bent slightly, brushing a fingertip across a thread, and felt a surge of warmth, as if the world itself was acknowledging him, telling him that every step, every choice, every fear he had faced had mattered. He whispered, voice trembling, "All this, it's been leading to here. Every moment, every decision, every mistake, has brought me to this place." Mira squeezed his hand gently. "And we face it together," she said, her voice a calm anchor against the swirl of emotions around them. Ahead, the lattice of light coalesced into a soft archway, pulsing with warmth that beckoned them forward. Elias felt a flicker of doubt. "What if I'm not ready?" he murmured. Mira turned to him, eyes steady. "Readiness isn't the point," she said. "Courage is. Moving forward even when you don't know what's waiting. That's what matters." Elias nodded slowly, letting her words settle in his chest. The hum around them intensified, vibrating through their bones, through the glowing threads, wrapping them in a quiet reassurance. Step by step, they approached the archway. The light within seemed to mirror their own emotions: fear, hope, curiosity, all flowing and interweaving, forming patterns that guided them like a living map. Elias felt the weight of the journey pressing on him, yet the presence of Mira beside him steadied his courage. "Together," he whispered. Mira smiled faintly. "Always," she said. When they finally crossed the threshold, the world shifted again. The threads of light stretched infinitely in every direction, connecting to stars, constellations, and distant galaxies as if the universe itself had unfolded before them. Elias felt a profound realization settle deep within. The journey had never been about reaching a specific place or seeing a specific vision. It had been about the discovery of courage, the embrace of trust, and the willingness to step forward into the unknown, no matter how daunting it seemed. The hum softened to a gentle pulse, and Elias turned to Mira. "I understand now," he whispered. "It's not the destination. It's the path, the courage to walk it, and the trust that we're never truly alone." Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting the endless threads of light. "And that's the truth the stars wanted us to see," she said softly. And as they stood together in the infinite expanse, hand in hand, the glowing threads surrounding them pulsed gently, a reminder that every step they had taken, every fear they had faced, and every choice to trust had led them to this moment. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth and hum fill him completely, and whispered to the night, "I am ready for whatever comes next." The universe, vast and alive, seemed to pulse in quiet approval. Elias and Mira stepped forward from the radiant archway, the threads of light beneath their feet stretching endlessly in every direction, glowing softly like the pulse of a heartbeat. The hum that had guided them since the observatory now filled the vast expanse, resonating through their bones and minds, a gentle reminder that they were part of something larger, something alive. Elias took a deep, shuddering breath. "It feels endless," he whispered. Mira's eyes scanned the glowing horizon. "Endless," Yes, but not frightening. Not if we walk it together. He nodded, gripping her hand tightly, drawing strength from the warmth and steadiness of her presence. As they walked, the threads beneath them shifted and reformed with every step, showing fleeting glimpses of moments from their lives, times of doubt, fear, courage, and trust. Elias bent slightly, tracing a line with his fingers, feeling the energy ripple through him. It's like, my life is here, woven into the path, he murmured. Mira followed his gaze. And so is mine, she said softly. Every choice, every fear we faced, it's all led us to this. The realization filled them both with, the journey had been more than following light, it had been a reflection of everything that had shaped them. In the distance, a brighter glow began to appear, like a soft sun rising in this world of luminous threads. Elias felt a shiver of anticipation, coupled with a familiar tremor of fear. Do you think this is the next test? He asked quietly. Mira shook her head gently. Not a test, she said. An invitation. To see clearly, to understand, to step into what we've been learning all along. Elias exhaled shakily, heart hammering. Then we accept it, he whispered. Whatever it is, we face it together. As they neared the glow, the threads of light beneath their feet shifted into a defined path, narrowing into a bridge that spanned a vast space filled with shimmering energy. Elias felt the hum intensify, vibrating through the soles of his feet and up into his chest, syncing with his heartbeat. It's guiding us, he whispered. Mira nodded. It's showing us the way forward. We just have to keep moving. They stepped carefully onto the bridge, hand in hand, feeling the energy pulse beneath them with every step. The closer they moved toward the radiant horizon, the more the visions from the threads of light intensified, moments of courage, moments of doubt, moments when trust had seemed impossible but had been chosen anyway. Elias realized, with a sharp intake of breath, that the path wasn't just about reaching a place, it was about acknowledging every step that had brought them here, every fear they had faced, every decision to trust, and every act of courage, no matter how small. By the time they reached the center of the bridge, the glow ahead had formed into a massive, shimmering portal, its light warm and inviting, humming softly with life. Elias glanced at Mira, chest tight with anticipation. This feels like the turning point, he whispered. Mira squeezed his hand. It is, she said. And it's also the beginning. The moment where understanding meets courage. Elias took a deep breath, letting the hum fill him completely, and whispered, I'm ready. Mira mirrored him, voice soft but firm, and I'm with you. Together, they stepped into the portal, the threads of light wrapping around them like a warm embrace, carrying them into the next revelation, the next chapter, and deeper into the truth that the universe had been guiding them toward all along. As Elias and Mira stepped through the radiant portal, the world around them shifted once again, this time into a vast expanse of swirling light and color, where stars and threads of energy wove together like a living tapestry. The hum that had guided them since the observatory became a symphony, vibrating through their bodies and minds in a rhythm that matched their heartbeats. Elias felt his chest tighten with awe, whispering, It's overwhelming. I've never imagined anything like this. Myra's eyes sparkled with the reflected light. It's not meant to be understood all at once, she said softly. It's meant to be experienced, step by step, heart by heart. The threads of light beneath their feet shifted with every movement, forming intricate patterns that seemed to respond to their thoughts and emotions. Elias bent slightly, brushing a finger across a glowing strand, and felt a surge of warmth, as if the world itself recognized him, affirming every choice he had made to arrive here. Everything, all of it led me here, he murmured. Myra's hand found his, grounding him. And it led us here, she said gently. Together. That's what matters. As they advanced, the swirling light began to form shapes, visions of mountains, forests, and lakes, fragments of distant worlds, yet familiar somehow. Elias realized these were reflections of the paths they had walked, the decisions they had made, and the courage they had found along the way. It's showing us our journey, he whispered. Not just the destination, but every step, every fear, every act of trust. Mira nodded, her gaze steady. It's reminding us that the journey itself is the lesson. Ahead, a brighter pulse of light began to take shape, forming an archway of pure energy suspended in the expanse. Elias's heart raced, fear mingling with exhilaration. This feels like the culmination, he murmured. Myra's hand tightened around his. It is, she said. And yet it's also a beginning. What we see beyond this point is what we carry forward. Elias swallowed, feeling the weight and promise of those words settle deep in his chest. Step by step, they moved toward the glowing archway, the threads beneath them responding with gentle pulses, encouraging, guiding, affirming. Visions of courage and doubt flickered in the light, reminding Elias of the fears he had faced, the choices he had made, and the trust he had embraced. I understand now, he whispered. This place, it's not just showing us the path. It's showing us ourselves. Mira smiled softly. Exactly, she said. Everything we've learned, everything we've faced, it's all part of who we are, and who we are becoming. When they reached the center of the archway, the hum swelled, surrounding them with warmth and light. Elias felt a profound clarity settle in his mind and heart. The journey had never been about the stars alone, or the threads, or the visions. It had been about courage, trust, and the willingness to face the unknown. Myra's eyes met his, calm and unwavering. Are you ready? She asked. Elias exhaled, voice steady now. I am. And I'm not afraid. Hand in hand, they stepped fully into the archway, letting the threads of light envelop them. The universe around them shimmered, infinite and alive, and Elias knew with certainty that whatever lay ahead, the lessons of courage, trust, and discovery would guide them through. The journey continued, not toward an end, but deeper into understanding, together. Elias and Mira emerged from the glowing archway into a vast chamber of light that seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. The threads of energy beneath their feet intertwined with streams of starlight, creating pathways that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. The hum that had guided them now became a steady, melodic vibration, resonating deep within their chests, seeking their courage with the rhythm of the universe itself. Elias took a shuddering breath. It's incredible. I can feel it all around me, in me. Mira nodded, eyes reflecting the endless light. This is where everything comes together, she said softly. Every choice, every fear, every act of trust, it all converges here. They began moving forward, each step sending ripples through the threads beneath them. With every ripple, visions flickered around them, moments from their past, dreams they had almost forgotten, fears they had conquered, and acts of courage they had never noticed. Elias bent slightly, touching a glowing thread, and whispered, "It's like the universe is showing me who I've been and who I can be." Myra's hand found his, grounding him. "And it's showing us the path forward," she said softly. "The path we have to choose with our hearts, not just our minds." As they advanced, the threads of light began to weave into shapes, bridges, towers, and pathways that seemed almost alive, shifting with purpose, guiding them toward a brighter glow in the distance. Elias felt a surge of anticipation, mixed with the familiar tremor of fear. "Do you think we're ready for what's next?" he whispered. Myra's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "We've been ready all along," she said. "This is the part where we see the strength we've carried without even knowing it." The glow ahead took form, a massive gateway of radiant energy, its surface alive with moving constellations. The hum intensified as they approached, vibrating through the threads beneath their feet, through their bodies, and into their hearts. Elias felt his fear pressing against him, but Myra's hand in his was steady, reassuring, a reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. "Together," he whispered. Myra smiled. "Always," she replied. Step by step, they moved toward the gateway. The threads beneath their feet shifted, creating a bridge of light that carried them steadily, showing glimpses of challenges and triumphs alike. Visions of moments where they had faltered, yet persisted, flickered alongside moments of joy, clarity, and trust. Elias exhaled slowly, understanding fully now that every step, every choice, every fear faced had prepared them for this moment. When they reached the center of the gateway, the hum swelled into a harmonious crescendo, filling every corner of the chamber with a sense of infinite possibility. Elias felt a profound clarity settle in him. The journey had never been about a final destination. It had been about discovery of courage, trust, and the strength to face the unknown. Myra's eyes met his once more. "Are you ready?" she asked. Elias nodded, voice steady. "I am. And I know I am not alone." Hand in hand, they stepped fully into the gateway, the threads of light wrapping around them like a warm embrace, lifting them forward into the next revelation. The universe seemed to hum in quiet approval, and Elias understood, with deep certainty, that the path ahead would continue to test, teach, and transform them, but they would face it together, hearts open, courage unwavering, guided by the light that had brought them this far. Elias and Myra stepped through the radiant gateway and found themselves in a realm that seemed to pulse with life itself. The ground beneath their feet glimmered like liquid silver, reflecting streams of starlight that intertwined with threads of glowing energy, weaving intricate patterns that shifted with every movement. The hum that had guided them for so long now wrapped around them fully, resonating with their hearts, syncing their breaths with the rhythm of the universe. Elias inhaled sharply, feeling awe and fear intertwined. "It's alive," he whispered. "Everything, it's alive." Myra's eyes scanned the expanse, soft light illuminating her face. "It isn't just alive," she said quietly. It's aware. It knows we're here. It's waiting. They began to move forward, each step sending ripples of light across the shimmering surface. Elias noticed that with every ripple, images flickered in the threads, moments of bravery, moments of doubt, dreams almost forgotten, and choices made with both courage and hesitation. He reached out, letting his fingers brush the glowing strands. It's showing me everything I've been, everything I am, he whispered, voice trembling. Mira gently touched his arm. And it's showing us the truth, she said softly. The courage, the trust, the lessons we've earned along the way. In the distance, a soft, golden glow began to form, radiating warmth and inviting them forward. Elias felt a familiar tremor of fear, but also a surge of hope. This feels like another threshold, he murmured. Mira smiled faintly. It is. But thresholds aren't just about challenge, they're about understanding. About stepping forward with what we've learned. Elias nodded, taking a deep, steadying breath. Then we moved forward. Together. As they approached the glow, the threads of light beneath their feet coalesced into a defined path, pulsing gently, guiding them toward the center of the golden radiance. Visions flickered along the way, echoes of past struggles, flashes of triumph, and reminders of trust given and received. Elias realized with a shiver of clarity that the path itself was a reflection of everything they had faced. The journey itself was the lesson, the truth, the revelation. I see it now, he whispered. The path, it's the teaching. Every step mattered. Mira nodded, her hand in his steady and reassuring. And now, we carry it forward, she said. When they reached the heart of the glow, the hum swelled into a deep, resonant pulse that vibrated through their very beings. The threads of light around them formed an intricate web of knowledge and energy, revealing the interconnectedness of all things, their choices, their courage, their trust, and the universe itself. Elias felt a profound clarity settle within him. The journey had never been about reaching a place, but about embracing every lesson, every fear, and every act of courage along the way. Hand in hand, they stepped fully into the center of the golden light, letting the threads of energy envelop them completely. Elias exhaled slowly, heart steady, and whispered, I understand now, it's not about the end. It's about learning, trusting, and moving forward. Myra's eyes reflected the radiance around them. And about facing it together, she said softly. And as they stood there, embraced by the hum and the light, Elias realized that the universe had shown them the deepest truth of all, that courage, trust, and the willingness to step forward despite fear and uncertainty are what illuminate the path, and that no one walks it alone when hearts are open and hands are held. Start episode Arshu. Episode Arshu. Elias and Mira moved forward from the center of the golden light, the threads of energy beneath their feet stretching endlessly, intertwining with streams of starlight that pulsed gently with each heartbeat. The hum that had guided them since the observatory now resonated through the entire realm, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the very pulse of life itself. Elias felt it deep in his chest, grounding his fear and filling him with a quiet determination. It's more than I imagined, he whispered. Every step we've taken, every choice, it all matters here. Myra's eyes followed the threads, reflecting the glow around them. Everything matters, she said softly. even the smallest act of courage or trust. That's what brought us to this point. As they continued, the threads beneath them shifted and formed patterns that mirrored moments from their journey, both triumphs and failures, fears faced and overcome, and choices made despite uncertainty. Elias bent slightly, brushing his fingers across a glowing strand, feeling the energy ripple through him like warmth flowing into his bones. "It's showing me everything I'd carried inside," he whispered, voice trembling. Mira placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "And it's showing us that those things are not weaknesses," she said. "They're the strength we need to move forward." In the distance, a faint arch of brighter light began to appear, suspended in the luminous expanse. Elias felt a familiar stir of anticipation and doubt. "Do you think this is another test?" he murmured. Mira shook her head gently. "Not a test," she replied. "It's an invitation. An invitation to step fully into the courage and understanding we've gained." Elias exhaled slowly, heart pounding. "Then we step," he whispered. "No hesitation. Together." The path toward the archway narrowed, the threads beneath their feet forming a bridge of light that pulsed with energy. Elias noticed visions of their journey reflected within the strands, the plateau, the lake, the glowing stones, the archways, each fear-faced, each act of trust embraced. He whispered, "Every step, it led us here. And every step has taught me something I needed to know." Mira nodded, her eyes steady. "And now we carry it forward," she said softly. As they reached the arch, the hum around them intensified, vibrating through their bodies with warmth and power. Elias felt a profound clarity settle in his mind. The journey was never about the destination, but about the lessons, the courage, and the trust discovered along the way. He turned to Mira, chest tight with emotion. "Are you ready?" he asked. Myra's hand found his, calm and unwavering. "Always," she said. Together, they stepped into the archway, the threads of light wrapping around them like a gentle, living embrace. The world shimmered and expanded around them, a space where courage, trust, and understanding converged. Elias exhaled, letting the warmth and hum fill him completely, whispering, "I understand now. It's about the journey, the learning, and moving forward." Mira squeezed his hand. "And about facing it together," she said softly. And as the threads of light carried them onward, Elias realized the ultimate truth the universe had been guiding them toward, that the courage to move forward, the trust to embrace the unknown, and the willingness to learn from every step illuminate the path, and that no one walks it alone when hearts are open and hands are held. Elias and Mira stepped beyond the glowing archway into a realm that felt like the very essence of the universe itself, a vast expanse of shimmering energy, where stars, light, and threads of radiant color intertwined, stretching into infinity. The hum that had accompanied them since the observatory now filled the space around them, resonating deep within their bones, syncing with their hearts and breaths. Elias swallowed hard, his chest tight with awe. "It's alive," he whispered. "Not just alive, aware. Every thread, every star, it knows we're here." Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting the luminous expanse. "And it's waiting for us to understand," she said softly. "To see what the journey has truly meant." They moved forward along the glowing threads, each step sending ripples of light across the radiant ground. As they walked, Visions flickered within the threads, moments of fear faced, courage found, trust given and received, choices made despite uncertainty. Elias reached out, letting his fingers brush a strand, and felt it vibrate through him, a warmth that seemed to say, "You are ready." He whispered, "Every step, every fear, every choice, it's all here," and it brought me strength. Myra's hand brushed his arm gently. "It's showing us ourselves," she said, "and the power we carry when we face the unknown together." Ahead, a pillar of brighter, golden light began to rise, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. Elias felt anticipation and doubt twist together in his chest. "Do we step into it?" he murmured. Myra's gaze was calm, unwavering. "We step," she said. "This is what everything has led us toward, the understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the act of moving forward despite it." Elias exhaled slowly, letting her words sink in. "Then we step," he whispered, drawing in a deep, steadying breath. The threads beneath their feet shifted, forming a bridge of radiant energy leading directly into the pillar. As they walked, visions of their journey flowed through the light, the observatory, the plateau, the lake, the glowing archways. Every moment they had faced fear and acted with trust, each ripple in the threads affirming that the journey itself had been the lesson. Elias's chest tightened as he realized the truth. The path had never been about reaching a destination, but about learning, trusting, and finding courage in every step. When they reached the base of the glowing pillar, the hum swelled into a full resonance, filling their entire being with warmth and light. Elias felt a quiet certainty settle deep in his chest. The universe had not merely guided them, it had revealed the power they already held within themselves. Myra's eyes met his, calm and steadfast. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Elias nodded, voice firm. "I am. And I know we face it together." Hand in hand, they stepped into the pillar of light. The threads of energy wrapped around them like a living embrace, carrying them upward, outward, into a space where courage, trust, and understanding converged. Elias exhaled fully, feeling the hum and warmth permeate every part of him. "I see it now," he whispered. "The journey, the lessons, the trust, it's all the path." Mira squeezed his hand, eyes glowing softly. "And together, we carry it forward," she said. And as the pillar of light lifted them higher into the infinite expanse, Elias understood the ultimate truth the universe had been guiding them toward, that the path is not about fearlessness, but about courage, trust, and embracing the unknown, and that no one walks it alone when hearts are open and hands are held. Elias and Mira emerged from the pillar of light into a realm that shimmered like liquid stars, an expanse so vast that it felt as if the universe itself had stretched open just for them. The threads of radiant energy beneath their feet pulsed gently, weaving together with streams of starlight above, creating patterns that shifted with every heartbeat. The familiar hum surrounded them, deep and melodic, resonating through their bodies, grounding them even as the endless expanse made their hearts race. Elias whispered, voice trembling with awe, "It's everything, all at once. I can feel the universe breathing." Myra's eyes reflected the glowing threads, calm yet full of wonder. "It's alive," she said softly. "And it's waiting for us to understand, to see what we become." As they moved forward, the threads beneath their feet rippled, revealing visions of their journey, the observatory, the plateau, the mirrored lake, the glowing archways, and every moment of doubt, trust, and courage. Elias bent slightly, brushing a hand over a strand, and felt a warmth pulse through him, carrying a message he instinctively understood. You are ready. He whispered, all of it, every fear, every choice, it's part of me now. Mira placed her hand on his arm. And together, we'd become stronger, she said. The path wasn't just guiding us, it was shaping us. In the distance, a soft golden glow began to emerge, brighter than anything they had seen before, forming a bridge of pure light that stretched toward a horizon of swirling stars. Elias felt anticipation and hesitation rise together in his chest. This feels like the final step, he murmured. Myra's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. It is, she said. And it's not the end, it's the culmination of everything we've learned. Courage, trust, understanding, it all comes together here. Elias exhaled slowly, feeling the truth of her words settle in his chest. Step by step, they moved along the bridge of light, each step sending ripples through the threads beneath them. Visions of their journey flickered in the glow, moments of fear faced with courage, choices made despite doubt, trust given when it was hardest, and acts of love and loyalty that had strengthened their hearts. Elias whispered, I see it now. The path itself, the journey, it's the lesson. Mira nodded. And now we carry it forward, she said softly. As they reached the end of the bridge, the golden glow formed into a magnificent archway suspended in the infinite expanse, its surface alive with pulsating constellations. The hum swelled to a full, resonant vibration, filling them with warmth and clarity. Elias felt a quiet certainty settle deep in his chest. The journey had never been about a destination. It had been about courage, trust, and discovering the strength to step forward despite fear. Myra's hand squeezed his. Are you ready? She asked softly. Elias nodded, voice firm. I am. And I know we face it together. Hand in hand, they stepped into the archway, letting the threads of light embrace them completely. The universe around them shimmered and stretched, a living space of infinite possibility. Elias exhaled, letting the warmth and hum fill him fully, whispering, the path, the lessons, the trust, this is everything. Mira smiled, eyes glowing softly. And together, we carry it forward, she said. As the threads of light carried them further into the infinite expanse, Elias understood the ultimate truth the universe had been guiding them toward. Courage is not the absence of fear. Trust is the willingness to move forward, and the journey itself shared with those who stand beside us is the greatest revelation of all. Elias and Mira stepped from the archway into a realm of radiant light that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of perception. The ground beneath their feet shimmered like liquid crystal, reflecting streams of energy that intertwined with starlight above, forming a living web that pulsed gently with each heartbeat. The hum that had accompanied them for so long now enveloped them completely, resonating deep in their chests, harmonizing with their very souls. Elias swallowed, awe and anticipation mingling in his voice. It's infinite. And yet, it feels like it's waiting for us. Myra's gaze scanned the expanse, soft light illuminating her calm yet awed expression. It's alive. Every pulse, every thread, it's aware. and it knows we're ready to understand. As they moved forward, the threads beneath their feet shifted and reformed, creating patterns that mirrored moments of their journey, the plateau, the mirrored lake, the glowing archways, every fear faced, every choice made with courage, and every act of trust. Elias bent slightly, brushing a finger across a glowing strand, feeling it vibrate with warmth that seemed to whisper, "You have grown." He murmured, "Everything, it all matters. Every step, every doubt, it shaped me." Myra's hand rested gently on his shoulder. "And together, we've grown stronger. The path has taught us more than we realized." In the distance, a brilliant golden light emerged, forming a bridge of radiant threads stretching toward a horizon swirling with stars. Elias felt the familiar pull of fear and exhilaration in his chest. "Is this the final threshold?" he whispered. Mira met his gaze, unwavering. "It is," she said softly. "But it's also the culmination, the moment where every lesson, every act of courage, and every choice converges. It's not an ending. It's understanding." Elias exhaled slowly, letting the truth of her words settle in his chest. They stepped onto the bridge, each movement causing ripples of energy to flow beneath their feet. Visions flickered along the strands, moments of fear overcome, trust embraced despite uncertainty, courage discovered in the darkest hours, and the love and loyalty that had guided them forward. Elias whispered, "The path, it's the lesson itself. Every fear faced, every choice made, it all matters." Mira squeezed his hand gently. "And now we carry it forward," she said softly. As they neared the end of the bridge, the golden light formed into a towering archway alive with constellations, shimmering and moving as if breathing. The hum swelled to a resonant crescendo, filling their hearts with warmth and clarity. Elias felt a profound certainty settle deep within him. The journey was never about the destination, it had always been about courage, trust, and the strength to move forward despite fear. Myra's eyes met his, steady and resolute. "Are you ready?" she asked. Elias nodded, voice firm and calm. "I am. And I know we face it together." Hand in hand, they stepped into the archway, letting the threads of light embrace them fully. The universe around them shimmered and expanded, a living space of infinite possibility. Elias exhaled, letting the hum and warmth fill him completely, whispering, "I understand now. The journey, the lessons, the trust, this is the truth." Mira smiled softly, eyes glowing. "And together, we carry it forward," she said. As the threads of light lifted them into the boundless expanse, Elias realized the ultimate truth the universe had been guiding them toward, that courage is the act of stepping forward despite fear. Trust is the willingness to embrace the unknown, and the journey shared with those who walk beside us is the greatest revelation of all. Elias and Mira stepped through the archway into a realm that shimmered like liquid starlight, stretching infinitely in every direction. The threads of radiant energy beneath their feet pulsed gently, weaving with the stars above, forming patterns that shifted with every heartbeat. The familiar hum that had guided them since the observatory now enveloped them completely, resonating through their bodies and grounding them as if the universe itself was breathing through them. Elias swallowed, chest tight with awe. "It's beyond anything I could imagine," he whispered. Myra's eyes reflected the endless glow. "It's not just light," she said softly. It's alive. And it's waiting for us to truly understand it. As they moved forward, the threads beneath their feet reshaped themselves into intricate paths that mirrored their journey, moments of fear faced, courage discovered, trust given, and choices made despite uncertainty. Elias reached out, brushing a glowing strand, feeling it vibrate with warmth, almost whispering, "You are ready." He murmured, "Every step, every doubt, every act of courage, it all brought me here." Myra's hand touched his arm gently. "And together, we've become stronger," she said. "The path has been teaching us all along." In the distance, a radiant golden bridge began to emerge, stretching toward a horizon alive with swirling constellations. Elias felt anticipation twist with fear in his chest. "This feels like the final step," he murmured. Myra's gaze met his, calm and unwavering. "It is. But it's not just a step, it's the culmination of everything we've learned. Courage, trust, understanding, it all comes together here." Elias exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words sink in. Step by step, they walked along the glowing bridge, each movement sending ripples through the threads beneath their feet. Images of their journey flickered in the light, the plateau, the mirrored lake, the glowing stones, the archways, and every moment of fear met with courage. Elias whispered, "I see it now. The path, the journey, it's the lesson itself." Mira squeezed his hand softly. "And together, we carry it forward," she said. At the end of the bridge, a towering golden archway rose, alive with constellations that shimmered and shifted as if breathing. The hum around them swelled into a full, resonant vibration, filling every fiber of their being. Elias felt a profound clarity settle in him. The journey had never been about a destination, but about courage, trust, and discovering strength in the unknown. Myra's eyes met his. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Elias nodded, voice calm and steady. "I am." And we face it together. Hand in hand, they stepped into the archway. The threads of light wrapped around them, lifting them into the infinite expanse where courage, trust, and understanding converged. Elias exhaled fully, letting the hum and warmth fill him, whispering, "I understand now, the journey, the lessons, the trust, this is the truth." Mira smiled, eyes glowing softly. "And together, we carry it forward," she said. As the threads of light carried them further, Elias realized the ultimate truth the universe had been guiding them toward, that courage is moving forward despite fear, trust is embracing the unknown, and the journey shared with those beside us is the greatest revelation of all. Elias and Mira stepped through the golden archway and found themselves in a realm that felt like the heart of the universe itself, an endless expanse of shimmering light and threads of radiant energy that intertwined with the stars above. The hum that had guided them since the observatory now resonated fully through their bodies, a living pulse that synced with their own hearts. Elias took a deep breath, chest tight with awe, and whispered, "It's perfect. Everything we faced, it all led to this." Myra's eyes reflected the vast radiance around them. "It's not just the end," she said softly. "It's the beginning of understanding, of seeing clearly, of embracing everything we've learned." They walked forward slowly, the threads beneath their feet forming a path of soft, pulsing light. Visions flickered within the strands, every moment of fear met with courage, every act of trust, every choice made despite uncertainty. Elias bent slightly, brushing his fingers over a glowing thread, feeling warmth and strength flow through him. All of it, every step, every doubt, it shaped us, he whispered. Mira squeezed his hand. And together, we've grown. That's the truth the universe has been showing us. Ahead, a radiant light formed a magnificent doorway, alive with shifting constellations, moving like living patterns across the golden surface. Elias felt a mixture of anticipation and fear. Is this the final truth? He murmured. Myra's gaze was calm and steady. It is, she said. The culmination of every lesson, every fear faced, every act of courage, and every choice made. It's the moment where understanding meets action. Elias exhaled slowly, heart steadying. Then we stepped forward. Together. Step by step, they moved toward the doorway, the threads beneath their feet responding with gentle pulses that mirrored their courage. Images of their journey appeared in the glowing strands, the plateau, the lake, the glowing archways, each fear they had faced, every choice made with trust, every act of bravery and love. Elias whispered, the journey, it wasn't about reaching a place. It was about learning, trusting, and discovering strength. Mira nodded, voice soft but firm, and carrying it forward, together. As they reached the center of the doorway, the hum swelled into a harmonious resonance that filled their beings completely. The threads of light wrapped around them like a living embrace, lifting them into a space of infinite possibility. Elias felt clarity settle in his mind and heart. The lessons had been about courage, trust, and the willingness to step into the unknown, not alone, but with someone beside him. Myra's eyes met his, glowing softly. Are you ready? She asked. Elias nodded, calm and resolute. I am. And together, we face it all. Hand in hand, they stepped fully into the doorway, and the threads of light carried them into the infinite expanse, a realm where courage, trust, and understanding converged into one luminous truth. Elias exhaled, letting the warmth and hum fill him completely. I understand now, the journey, the trust, the courage, this is everything. Mira smiled, her hand holding his firmly. And together, we carry it forward, she said. And in that boundless light, Elias realized the ultimate truth the universe had been guiding them toward, that courage is moving forward despite fear, trust is embracing the unknown, and the journey, the shared path of hearts walking together, is the most profound revelation of all. The stars above shimmered, the threads of light pulsed in harmony, and the universe itself seemed to whisper in quiet approval, this is the way, and together, you are ready.